So that's the first piece, is setting up your foundation, your structural pillars. The next piece is setting the table. So there's two critical pieces here. First is that things that get rewarded get done, right? Is that generally true? And people do what gets measured. So we talked about that with coaches. And then leadership is mostly teaching and selling. If you're not teaching or selling, you're not leading. So a big piece of what we're doing is we're trying to teach, we're trying to spread the gospel of our mission. And so that's a big part of what you guys are doing. And this concept that the people may change, but the vision endures. When we think about setting the table, we want to make sure that there's total clarity of cultural norms. So because I called all this down here, I want you to look at this and tell me if this was how your table was set, and there's not a problem with either of these, right? So this is one table, right? So that's one table. What are we going to do at this table? What would you imagine might happen at this table? Where would we be? Eating. Yeah, what would we be eating? Where
picnic?
Yeah, we might be at a picnic, we might be at an outdoor barbecue, something like that. And then what about this one? We set this up here. We have this.
This is a nice restaurant.
Maybe. I mean, these are my IKEA codes, so let's not get too crazy. But, dinner.
We had home.
Right. So,
I have those glasses.
you have, they're nice, right? Yeah, keep them nice, and if you break them, it's okay. But these are two different things that we're setting up for. And you guys have an expectation. This one might be a picnic, barbecue, something we might eat with our hands, get a little messy. This one might be more formal. Maybe we're sitting around a table. Both are fine. Both are great. But the trick is that you have an expectation. So when we work with our coaches, when we work with our athletes, when we work with everyone in our organization, we want to make sure that we're clear about what's happening. Because if I'm inviting you to a picnic, you might wear something different than I'm inviting you to a formal dinner, and you might act differently. So you guys talking about this?
Him and I was. We just talking about expectations.
Exactly. So we want to make sure that there's total clarity of our cultural norms. And people need to hear it a lot. It can't just be us saying one time, this is what we're about. We can hear it a bunch of times. So if I said this, they're great. What am I advertising? What would that be?
Frosted Flakes.
Frosted Flakes. All right, just do it.
Nike.
Is it in you? That's an old one.
Gatorade.
Gatorade, right? And you know these things. Why?
Because you see them.
You see it all the time, right? And there's this thing that we need to hear it 7 times, the marketing principle. Same thing with you guys. You want something to happen, you got to say it over and over and over and over and over again. So continue to do that through multiple channels, throughout the season, not just at the beginning, not just at the end, not just at the middle. Every time you have the opportunity. We are about fostering. Boom, 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 boom. Our culture is. So people know. So if I walk in here in a year's time and I pull out any one of your athletes, I can say, what is PSA all about? And they're going to tell me something very similar to what you would tell me.
Right.
That's the goal, right? So in their thing, you have ways you can look at written, spoken, visual, and you guys have the full list. But the result is that everyone knows what's expected. Everyone knows what's expected. That message bombardment. So we have this reflection. You guys don't have it in your book, but what would be a good thing for you guys to add to your to-do list is scenarios, right? So think of 3 things. Each of you could come into a meeting one time and think about, this is a problem that I've had as a coach, as an administrator, whatever it is, and you guys all come in and then talk about what would we do in this situation? What would it look like? We have this example up here that, an official makes a call, parents are yelling. What do you guys, in your ideal world, would like to have happen? What's happened in the past? How are we going to make sure that when it does happen again, that the actual reaction is what we want? So that would be a really cool exercise for maybe you guys to do either with your coaches, with this group, with whatever group you want, but to think about, what is the scenario that has happened? So has happened. What was the response? And then how do we want it? Ideally. So, and then what are we going to do to make that happen? So that's another on your to-do list. The final piece is the concept of fixing broken windows. So culture begins to degrade the moment windows are broken. Have you guys ever heard of this this theory of broken windows? It comes from...
It's in the book, Tipping Point?
Well, it comes from this book. It actually comes from an article that was written in 1982.
Okay.
But the point of it is in here, and essentially it's saying, It's talking about New York City. And, in the 90s, crime was going down, just in general, across the country. And then people were saying, oh, it's because we're becoming more affluent, the economy's picking up. But in New York, it wasn't happening. And so they're trying to figure out, well, what happened? And what happened is this change in crime and how they looked at crime as a city. And so Broken Windows is a brainchild of criminologists James T. Wilson and George Kelly. Wilson and Kelly argued that crime is the inevitable result of disorder. If a window is broken and left unrepaired, people walking by will conclude that no one cares and no one is in charge. Soon more windows will be broken, and the sense of anarchy will spread from the building to the street on which it faces, sending a signal that anything goes. Same thing. You guys know you walk down the street, you see a bunch of garbage, no one cares about that space. We pick up the garbage. Now there's no garbage, no one cares. You see a building that's spray painted, and the best story I can give you is when I worked on the west side of Chicago. We're in a building, 2 empty lots. One lot, the church was on the other side of it, and they'd always go in there and clean it up, pick up the garbage. We'd help them pick up the garbage, but it was still growing grass, but they'd pick it up, they'd mow it down, or do whatever they could. Other side started out the same way. Car got in there. Car on cinder blocks, wheels taken off. Garbage dumped over the fence. 2 fences, and just these 2 spray paint on the side of that wall. And you could just see it happening right before your eyes. And so our trick as an organization is when there's a broken window, when there's something wrong happening, what's going to be our reaction? How are we going to nip it in the bud? How are we going to make sure that we solve it right away so it doesn't keep building and building and building and tear our program down? In your book, you guys have informal levels, so these nonverbal ways, the gentle reminders, how we're going to react to these scenarios. And then, of course, you have formal levels and official warnings. This one I like a lot, well-publicized policy, because then it couples with this concept of social learning theory. And that's, so if someone's escorted out, let's let everyone know. Hey, Molly was escorted off the courts because she yelled at the refs, and that's not what we do. And people start to learn from that. So making sure that we're fixing those. And what we know is that in a strong positive culture, things are stopped informally. We don't have to escalate to those things. So making sure that you guys have that. So you have all these things. You have a game plan. You have in your book here this map. This is one way to look at it, but I'd encourage you guys to, as your final to do, is to map out the season and say, what are we going to do when? What should be done in the fall? What should be done in the spring? What are we going to do? With athletes, with parents, with the church, with ourselves. What are going to be the important things for us to do, and who's going to do it? And to work through that and actually map it out. In the old TCA workshop, they had the task, then they had who, and then they had when. And literally write down your tasks and then put who's going to do it to make sure it happens. Because I know that in our organizations, things like this, it becomes, we get a lot on our plate. And so different things happen. So you guys have the rest of the information in your book there. I took an extra 5, but hopefully you got something out of that 5. We didn't take you too long. Again, thank you guys so much for making your night available. As I said, I know you have a lot going on. I'm happy to stay and talk more, but I want to be respectful of your time. So
We may need to get part 2, huh?
anything that you guys want to talk about here. And then if you could, just so I can give it back to PCA, there's an evaluation in the book somewhere. There you go. So page 21, there's it's like a number evaluation. If you wouldn't mind just circling, and any comments that you have how we can make this better, or things that you might want to change, or things that I can do better.
Can we tear this out?
And yeah, give that to me, and I send it into PCA, and we do our best to make good changes. So thank you guys so much, and I really hope that you are successful in all of your efforts, because it seems like that you're on a good track. Hellerman. Hellerman.
Okay.
All right, so thanks, guys.